So you're having breakfast at home and wave at the passengers of a plane passing by your house. Another one. You live on the 739th floor of X-Seed 4000. It's an entire city contained in one massive skyscraper. It sounds unrealistic right now, but one day it may become a reality. So let's see what we'd need to make it happen. But first, let's browse through the list of once tallest constructions on the planet. The Great Pyramid of Giza, originally standing at 481 feet, used to be the tallest structure ever built by humans for over 3,800 years. The Lincoln Cathedral took this title away from the Great Pyramid only in 1311, winning by just 1 foot. Then, the Washington Monument became the new champion. As people were starting to use steel more and more, the Eiffel Tower became the tallest construction in the world. Then followed the Empire State Building. It didn't keep the title for long, with more and more skyscrapers built across the world. Let's fast forward from here to the current record holder, the Burj Khalifa. It has 163 floors and stands twice as tall as the Empire State Building and around 3 times taller than the Eiffel Tower. On a clear day, you can see it from a distance of 60 miles. It takes a whole 1 minute in a high-speed elevator to get from the ground floor to level 124, where one of the observation decks is located. It took 6 years to finish this beauty, which became one of the symbols of Dubai. Speaking of its location, if you've ever tried building something in the sand, you know how hard it is to make the construction stable. The engineers had to drill 192 holes under the 110,000-ton concrete foundation of this massive construction. They also brought millions of tons of sand from Australia. Yes, they brought extra sand to the desert because the local sand gets doughy, almost like snow, in endless dust storms. The Australian sand is less smooth and has turned into a perfect base for the building. Thanks to the friction between concrete and soil, these piles don't move at all, and the foundation remains solid. Now, the same architect designed another building that is supposed to become the new record holder. The Jeddah Tower in Saudi Arabia is supposed to be almost 600 feet taller than Burj Khalifa. Once finished, the construction, made of 80,000 tons of steel, will host the world's highest observatory. Jeddah Tower will have 59 elevators, and some of them will be double-decker ones. The bottom third of the skyscraper is supposed to be office spaces. The next levels will host a luxury hotel, and the remaining 167 floors will be reserved for apartments. The narrowing silhouette of the building is supposed to help it withstand winds and gravity. The base will definitely be extra wide to make the entire construction stable. Only 1/3 of the building has been finished so far, and construction has been frozen for an unknown period of time. The reasons for this decision don't have to do with geology or climate. Humans have learned to deal with all kinds of soils and conditions. For example, if we want to build our future skyscraper in a seismically active zone, we'd need to make it flexible. Piles can hold the weight of the building, but the concrete pad would stand on huge springs. During an earthquake, the ground will shake and move from side to side, but the springs will dampen and compensate for the movement, so the building will stay in place. The wind is another problem for skyscrapers. The taller the building, the more the wind's affected. That's why most skyscrapers are built to be able to sway in the wind or have holes to allow the wind to pass through instead of crashing against the building surface. So, in theory, if you have the right materials and enough funding, you can go as tall as you want. All you have to do is expand the base to make your construction stable. Now, because our planet is spherical in shape, you'd have to stop at some point. But even a base of that size would be enough to hold a skyscraper higher than Mount Everest itself. X-Seed 4000 building would stop halfway in that race, at a height of 45% of the world's tallest peak. Mount Fuji became the inspiration for this design that might actually be built in the Tokyo harbor. It will be a self-contained city in one building, powered mostly by solar energy. This city can become home to up to 1 million people. And these people might not have to leave their huge home, as there will also be offices inside. Engineers will need to work out several issues to make the whole project possible. Since the building will have 800 floors, there will be a huge difference in air pressure between the top and the bottom levels. They'll need to figure out a way to level it out so residents feel comfortable and healthy. Then, just imagine the number of power cables to enable the work of all the gadgets and mechanisms. They plan to replace those with renewable energy generators. The base of the building will have to be about 4 miles in diameter to support its huge weight. It's the same size as the bottom of some mighty mountain. The opening on the top will let some air and natural light flow inside and lighten the load on the foundations. X-Seed 4000 currently holds the title of the largest building that has ever been fully designed but is not on the list of buildings to be completed in the near future. Engineers don't rule out that with new materials and design innovations, it may be technically possible, but it would cost a lot of money. Another ambitious project that is so far just a concept is a 12.4-mile skyscraper. That's 24 Burj Khalifas put on top of each other. Wow! Science fiction author Neil Stephenson, who developed the project, suggested using this skyscraper as a liftoff ground for rockets. The author studied physics before taking up science fiction, so the project could be realistic with the right high-grade steel. Stephenson claimed it would be the cheapest way to launch rockets into space. The engineers would also have to take care of the winds that get pretty intense at a height like this. Speaking of space travel, we might not even need rockets to go up there in the not-too-distant future. The space elevator could take humans up to an altitude of 22,000 miles from the Earth's surface. The idea is actually nearly 150 years old. Both NASA and researchers from different countries agree we're now pretty close to its realization. Some construction companies claim they can build it by 2045. The first big step towards that goal is to test how an elevator would act in space. It will be a unique experiment, and a mini elevator used in it will be a prototype of the future grand project. Scientists are trying to find the right material to replace the regular cable. It would need to extend for tens of thousands of miles and would be too heavy for the future construction. It looks like an ultra-strong material known as graphene could do the job. Testing and building the elevator fit for space and a cable strong enough to hold it is one side of the story. Another problem is space debris, those pieces of rockets and spacecraft orbiting the Earth that could damage the construction if they run into it. But since many bright minds are working to solve this problem, we can be optimistic about it and expect the first launch several years from now. It will open up a whole new era of space exploration, as going up there will become a matter of pushing just one button. Woohoo!
An hour after people disappear, most urban areas will be left empty and quiet. Perhaps the sound of wind, falling leaves, or other natural sounds previously drowned out by city noise and traffic will be heard. The subways of many cities are protected from groundwater by a system of pumps. If there are no people to monitor such systems, most subways will flood within 36 hours. Due to malfunctions, sewage treatment plants will stop working, leading to pollution of rivers and lakes with wastewater. The water pipes in Detroit will become unusable, leading to the flooding of the city. Food in refrigerators will spoil. Raccoons and wolves will inhabit abandoned human homes. Major airports will be covered in rust and overgrown with ivy. Cruise ships in Alaska will sink under the weight of ice that accumulates on them. Lions from the San Diego Zoo will gradually escape, emboldened by the power outage of the electric fence around their enclosures. More and more black cats will appear on the streets of Rome and the Vatican. Rats and mice will consume all edible reserves and leave the cities. Plants will begin to grow in cracks in streets, highways, sidewalks, and buildings. More and more animals will notice the absence of people and flock to the cities. International Space Station will gradually decrease. Since no one will correct its orbit, the station will eventually fall to Earth and burn up. Along with it, digitized samples of human DNA will perish. A large part of the city's territory will be covered with a vegetation of lianas, grasses, and tree seedlings. The Red Square in Moscow will have a layer of soil and thick grasses growing, making the square completely green. Despite high levels of radiation, animal populations are increasing in abandoned areas. Plants have grown in many houses and buildings. Seawater will flood cities that were once drained by artificial drainage systems, such as London and Amsterdam. Satellites will begin to fall to Earth. Since no one maintained their speed of movement, they slowly approached Earth and eventually fell to the planet's surface. Wolves now roam freely around the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, and wild boars will be seen in Paris. Human speech will be preserved in rare words that parrots have memorized during their years of living with humans. Snakes will not only reproduce at incredible rates, but also grow much larger in size. Their main prey will be rodents that have multiplied in the first years after humans disappeared. Many human-made structures will collapse within 100 years, primarily those with a large number of steel elements. Fruit Christmas cakes, thanks to their alcohol coating, will not only retain their appearance but also freshness. Most buildings will be overtaken by plants and animals, and the city will resemble more of a wild nature landscape. The period of nuclear fuel decay will come to an end, and as a result, dead zones around the ruins of nuclear power plants will once again become habitable. The last parrots that spoke human language may go extinct since they memorized human speech, but it is simply not necessary for their survival in the wild. All modern carriers of information that preserve human culture, laser discs, photographic film, paper, and the like, will turn to dust. Rebar inside concrete buildings, which are more durable than steel ones, will expand 3 times due to rust, causing the destruction of concrete structures. Most modern cities will be covered by a green blanket, and collapsed skyscrapers and buildings will become new hills. Manhattan will return to its former state before human settlement, with numerous streams and lakes. There will be almost no evidence of the existence of human civilization. Only powerful stone buildings that rely solely on the force of gravity will survive, such as Notre Dame de Paris. Of the products that existed during human civilization, only honey, especially in clay pots, and oil in wooden barrels, will be well preserved. Only a few stone structures will survive, including the pyramids in Giza and the Sphinx, almost entirely buried in the sands of the desert, and fragments of the Great Wall of China. By this time, a new ice age will begin on Earth. It is expected that the KEO satellite will enter the atmosphere by this time. Various pieces of space debris will collide with it during its descent, but this will not destroy the satellite. Eventually, it will fall into the waters of the world ocean. Remnants of spacecraft and satellite debris will float through space as the only reminder of human civilization.
Imagine that everything built by humans now outweighs everything else living on the planet, including humans, animals, fungi, plants, and even microorganisms. And what if it won't be long until we have no room left, and we'll need to move to Mars and take what we can with us? The world leaders have turned to Frederick Salazar, the extraordinary problem solver with this predicament. They inform him that it's essential to measure the total weight, also called anthropogenic mass, if we want to take what we can from Earth to Mars. Although Frederick is the right man for the job to manage the situation, he knows he will need someone reliable. The person he has in mind is Annie Supernova. The daring explorer gifted with the superpower to lift the heaviest things is known for her deeds throughout Earth. Once, she quickly lifted the heaviest tower in the world, Burj Khalifa, and moved a pyramid of Khufu. Annie Supernova is driven with an adventurous spirit. No task is too large, no path too long. She is not one to be afraid to get her hands dirty, and those hands will get pretty messy when she calculates the total weight of the objects that humans have built. It will be a difficult task, but Annie has a game plan to examine materials used for buildings: concrete, bricks, and metals. She needs to consider which buildings to take to Mars and what will remain. Annie will need to venture deep into different areas around the world. Some locations are tough to access and may be dangerous. Well, the mission is on. New York. Annie is rushing through the busy metropolis. She quickly lifts the Empire State Building. Confused people wonder what Annie is up to as she quickly notes down the total weight of 365,000 tons. On her way, she also picks up a couple of skyscrapers, each of them being about 222,500 tons. She estimates the total weight of NYC is 3 billion tons in total. Well, she can move this city. She puts the buildings back and quickly runs to the airport. Annie flies towards Japan. Parachuting down, she stops at Tokyo Tower. Amongst the crowd of people, she quickly lifts it up to measure it, weighing 4,000 tons. As the onlookers are confused with Annie's actions, she quickly drives to a nearby fairground, which turns out to be abandoned. Annie arrives at a forest with high walls of vines. The vegetation makes it difficult to record the size. It's Nara Dreamland, closed for many years. Great roller coasters stand motionless, with vegetation growing in every part of the park, taking advantage of the still-standing structures of rides and old buildings. The foliage has made homes to birds and small animals. It doesn't appear as though any human has ventured this way for a very long time, compared to when it was at its peak with 1.7 million visitors per year. It's now become a haven for nature. She takes a mass indicator to measure its total weight. She has an idea that all the materials can be reused or demolished to unload the Earth from the unused mass. She calls her robot friend, the Leveler, who appears in no time, recycles all the materials, and saves the Earth from several thousands of tons. Annie takes notes and heads to Paris. Dodging the croissants and baguettes, Annie quickly weighs the Eiffel Tower. Built with solid wrought iron, it weighs a total of 10,000 tons. Annie wipes the sweat from her brow and moves on. Annie collects her things and takes a submarine to England. She arrives at the southern coast. From there, she discovers the Moncel sea forts, standing quietly alone with nothing but the surrounding sea. Lonesome, they sit in the water, the walls falling apart with seabirds' nests resting in the crooks and crannies of the buildings. It seems as though they were close to falling over. The legs beneath the waves stand firm. Seaweed and small crustaceans live peacefully, attracting small fishes that many birds above feed on. Although these structures were decommissioned in the 1950s, they were later used for pirate radio stations, providing free music. The seagulls now continue to deliver music instead with their amazing songs. Annie takes the notes with her mass indicator of this cast area. From here, Annie takes a refreshing swim in the Mediterranean Sea to Egypt to weigh the largest of the three pyramids, the Great Pyramid, the largest, weighing 5,750,000 tons, made from a mixture of limestone, basalt, granite, and mortar. Annie does some yoga to stretch her muscles after such a challenging exercise and takes her time to the following location. Annie gathers her warm weather clothing as she takes a trip to the Arctic in northern Russia. There, she finds an old weather station. Buildings make the only significant sights in this lonely area, surrounded by snow as far as the eye can see. Amongst the buildings, polar bears have moved into the houses as if they were built for them. The bears sit on the porch and look out into the distance through the windows. Annie laughs as they look as though they were impersonating humans living in their stead. Houses of 1,000 square feet or less fall into the small homes category. They have an average weight of around 50,000 to 100,000 pounds. Bears can stay there as they naturally took them over. Later, Annie heads to a warmer climate, finding herself in China along the Great Wall. She has to carefully pick up independent sections of this massive structure that covers a total of 5,500 miles. Altogether, the Great Wall weighs a whopping 58 million tons. Exhausted, Annie gathers her scuba diving gear to go for a relaxing swim towards Vanuatu. Here in Vanuatu, she dives underwater in a place called $1 Million Point, where people dumped many cars, trucks, and other vehicles in the late 1940s. Annie dives underwater and experiences the breathtaking beauty of the submerged mountain of metal machinery, laying silently in the depths of the water. Annie records the assortment of old vehicles, amazed because she notices that they have naturally created an artificial reef. Barnacles, corals, oysters, and algae have all attached themselves to the steel mechanisms, feeding off the minerals and growing into forests of underwater vegetation. Each vehicle creates an independent biosphere. She wants to call the leveler, but doesn't, as she sees hundreds of fish have made their home throughout the pile of discarded objects. The fish have found themselves shelter and the provided benefit of an unlimited buffet of vegetation. It's time to make her way back to headquarters and report to Frederick. She takes her time on her way back. As she flies over China, she sees 50 abandoned cities altogether. And on her way through the USA, she finds over 3,000 abandoned towns and, through some off-road locations, takes account of abandoned hotels, lighthouses, monuments, churches, castles, and all other types of structures in various shapes and sizes. Once again, noticing a different element throughout each one, that nature is abundant in the absence of humans. Annie finally arrives at the headquarters of Frederick's office, exhausted. Frederick greets Annie together with her friend Leveler, who just joined them. The boss awaits the final report. Annie shows her presentation. As per her assessment and calculations, the total weight of what humans have created on Earth is about 1,154 gigatons. It is in direct opposition to the dry weight of all life on Earth, called global biomass. In about 20 years, it is expected that the world will be covered in only anthropogenic mass. She presents what she had witnessed with the famous sites and abandoned structures. No doubt she can lift and move the necessary buildings to Mars, but there is no need to leave the Earth. They just need to unload the planet from the unused materials from the abandoned places. Whether on land or in the sea, nature has a second chance to return, which takes advantage of the materials and constructions to create their biospheres. Vines crawl the height of the walls. Trees grow in the soft sandy bricks. Insects feed upon the plants and flowers. Birds nestle within the vegetation. All kinds of animals have found a home in manufactured covers. These structures provide a new place to live. Frederick silently sits as Annie says that humans should also take an example from the other living things and give themselves a second chance on the Earth. The leveler smiles and is ready to work on the unused materials. And Frederick is ready to remind humans how unique and beautiful their planet is.